2026 Virginia Marathon. This one is taking place on March 22nd here. Here are some photos of the race course itself here, some fun views from it before we dive into the major details of the Virginia Marathon this year. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. If you are in need of any coaching, advice, assistance, course recon, that kind of thing, please reach out. Contact info is down below. So let's dive into the nitty-gritty details for us. We're going to talk about some basic pre-race things and then the course here. So race times for our marathon, our start time is 8 a.m. Scrolling up above the ads over here, you also are able to pick up your packet from 6:30 until your race time on race morning, and you can pick it up days before. So make sure you read up on that and know where to go and how to do it. So race details, some key things here. We have some water stands. At the water stands, they're going to offer water and Gatorade. The mile markers are listed right here. We also have that listed on our map, which we will pull up. Bathrooms are going to be provided on the route and at the start/finish area. Make sure you read up on the parking because it is a little limited. So make sure you know your plan of attack for race morning. All right, so this is the map that has been provided. This has about 2,000 feet of elevation gain. Sorry about that. 2,000 feet of elevation gain. If you look at the map that we have created out here, same kind of scenario. We are a little bit over 2K of elevation feet. Athletes have reported anywhere from 2 to 3K of elevation gain, depending on GPS, wearable watch. So it's a lot. So this course is not necessarily a PR course per se out here. This is more this would be like a foray into ultra running. So this is a great course to do that. Very, very tough course, by the way. This is it's kind of a rolling course, a rhythm busting course. There is a definite long stretch that you're going to need to worry about. And a lot of things change on this course. So the first big thing is weather. Let's get it out of the way. Typical start temperature, you're anywhere from low 30s to high 30s, maybe mid 40s. Finish temperature, you're hovering around the low 60s, maybe a little bit lower. So it's not going to be a 80-degree day unless magic happens for you. Hopefully it does. And if it does, then things change there as well. So a large portion of this is off-road, right? And what you get with that, I mean, it just highly depends on the weather conditions leading up to the race. So if you've had a couple of wet, nasty days leading up to it, you're going to have a muddy time out there, and it's going to be a little bit slower and tougher for you to navigate the off-road portions out here. If it's been a couple of cold, hard days leading up to it, no precipitation in the days, weeks leading up, then the ground is going to be a little bit harder, a little bit firmer out there on race day. They're also in the off-road sections. The road is not perfectly flat. It's going to be cantered one side to the other. Make sure you're aware of that and you are actively countering any issues that you might have with that. IT issues, hip issues, ankle issues are a big one out here. A lot of athletes who race this course will try, I mean, if it's their first time out here, they'll try to race it like a typical road or a city marathon. And what will happen is those athletes will fly and die, usually about the 20-mile mark, and then they'll really, really suffer on the way back in. Another cool couple of features out here, we do have a number of out and backs. We start off and we're going to roll over this a couple times. So we are going to start off in that top left-hand portion. We're going to head our way down and hang a left-hand turn, and we are off-road out here doing our our first out and back, and then we're going to maintain this. This is going to be the longest stretch of, I guess you could call it, road out there. And we are going to hit our second turnaround point out here, turning around, hanging another left-hand turn for our third turn around right here before we head back to our finish or our start/finish area. So that's the course recon. You can see the water aid stations. Only one I'm not super confident on is this one located right here. Looking at the map, this one makes the most sense right there, but it could be placed in a little bit of a different spot. So make sure you are tracking that in I guess the days and the weeks leading up to it, but also when you arrive on race morning, make sure you're double checking where that aid station is. Speaking of aid, if you're looking at these aid stations and thinking this is a lot less aid than in a typical road marathon, you are correct. So this is another kind of foray into the ultra community, right? I would definitely suggest you bringing your own stuff and using the course to supplement your fueling and things like that. I wouldn't totally rely on it. I would use some of the things that you bring in addition to what is on course, right? You also have to think that a lot of your times in between aid stations are going to be typically slower than what would normally be on a road circuit. So all that into effect is you need to bring your own stuff to kind of get you through to aid station to aid station to aid station. Don't necessarily rely on those aid stations. All right. So So now we got the kind of the major things out, right? And a common strategy for a lot of athletes is to split this up into those four little section, one, two, three, and four, right? And then you're running on back with number one. And when you split these up into those four little webs, four little legs, it becomes a lot easier to manage, right? Just taking the elevation out for a little bit here, it becomes mentally easier. So now that I've made it easier, let's bring elevation back into it, right? We have obviously the elephant in the room, 2,000 feet of elevation gain. If we look at the big hill over here, we have about 670 feet of elevation gain. So a large percentage, almost half of our elevation gain. Now this comes at mile 14. So if we highlight the first 14 miles, we have 13, let's call it 1350 of elevation gain. And again, that's out of 2,000. So we have a large portion of the elevation coming in the first half. That's why a lot of athletes get to this 20-mile mark and they totally crumble out here. They are over pacing up until this point and their body just gives up out there. Even though their times and their paces might not reflect the effort that they've put in, this is not a PR course unless you've only ran this course and you've only ran ultras, right? I would take this as kind of a durability test out here. You can definitely have a great time out here, but you know, it's probably not the course to PR on. This is the course to kind of, get some of the things checked off on your checklist on the way to your bigger goal. But this is going to be a very fun race, a very, very challenging race. This is my first year covering this race. I am excited to see what happens out there. So these first couple of miles are, let's highlight the first five. First five, you run the first little leg of your journey, and then you're going to hang a left-hand turn out here. We do have a couple of steeper hills out here, so again, watch out for your effort level. And when you're running on these hills, I would encourage you to switch to power if you have it, or heart rate exclusive monitoring. This is not necessarily a course that I would monitor pace, except for on the downhill portions of our race. If you find that you are actively flooring it and flying on the downhills, then you need to pull back a little bit on these sections out here. And some of them are going to be a little bit steeper than what you normally will encounter unless you are running in this area. So that's why I would kind of switch back over to the pace, but also heart rate secondary measure on the way down. On this way out, pace management is going to be your friend out here. I wouldn't expect this to be a super cluttered start, and even if it is, you're probably going to have the ability to kind of get around people or let people kind of get around you and run your own race, which is a little bit unique for a marathon. So a little bit jealous on that. So after you get through these first 5 miles out here, then the real race starts. Highlighting this section over here, we are going all the way up to the top portion of our second leg and then returning all the way back down to the bottom of our race course. Elephant in the room is definitely this big hill, and we will zoom in on that in a second. But on our way back up to our first turnaround on course, there is work to be had up here, and even these small hills, they are definitely deceiving from an elevation standpoint. As you roll over, you're seeing a lot of upper 2% and mid 3% gradients out here. So again, when you are doing these elevations, highly suggest that you switch over to your power. Highly suggest that you watch your heart rate as well. And this is the part of the race where you can kind of start to get into your groove out here, right? If you've found your groove very, very early on, you're going to have to watch out for over pacing and over effort expenditure up until this point. When we talk about aid stations, again, we are only going to arrive at our fourth aid station at about the 9.7 mile mark. So that means you're going to have to pace yourself appropriately and allow or rely on your own nutrition to get to that point out there. So once you get to that aid station here at mile 9, let's call it 9.7-ish, this is the elephant in the room, a 4.3 stretch of road slash gravel out here, category 4 climb. So there you are. We do have an average gradient of 2% with a max grade of 5.9% out here. So you are going up for let's call it 4.5 miles just to round up here. 4.5 miles you are going up. This is going to be a slow slog out here. You're going to have gravel, switch to road, back to gravel out here. And again, the conditions are going to kind of dictate your pacing out here. You work with what you have. You want to watch your stride length. You want to watch your stride intensity out here. You want to watch, watch the ego out here, especially on the way up. A lot of athletes are really going to chase other ones that they have no business running with. So make sure that you are instead of really forcing the hill, you want to shorten that stride, increase the cadence, all that typical stuff out there. But instead of like bounding up these hills, right, you want to kind of like spin to win, if that makes sense. You don't want to force the verticalness any more than you have to on this uphill, right? That's going to expend a ton of energy. And on the way down, on the opposite side out here, we can highlight this section back through here. We're going to highlight this section and we'll go almost to that second water stop. So in this section, we are starting at the bottom here. We are slowly coming all the way down, hanging a left-hand turn, and we are heading for our out and back number 3 out here before we turn back around. So in this section, a couple different things happen. You just went up for 4.5 miles. You are going down on the mega hill, right, for another 3.7 miles, and you're going to have 500 feet of elevation loss through that point. That is why athletes, when we talk about this section right here, ending at mile, like right before 18, mile 20 is usually the spot where athletes really, really feel it because they've had 4 miles of decline now, so they're really loading up the quads if they're not careful, right? And you want to think quiet feet on the way down this hill. You don't want to force this, right? If you find that you're really hammering I almost said pavement, but if you find that you're really hammering the gravel on the way down, something is wrong, right, with your stride, with your mechanics, right? And you need to be careful with your energy expenditure on the way down. This is a frustrating course because you can never really run the way you want to run until later in the race. But if you've spent the first 20 miles, 18 miles running the wrong way, overpacing and things like that, or not hitting your nutrition, you won't be able to run the way you want for the last couple of miles here. So zooming back out to this 20-mile stretch, if you can get to this spot in good position, you're going to be in happy days and you're going to find yourself mowing people down out here. Um, so that is the section over here. We're going to highlight our last big section, which is after we've hit this turnaround spot, we are coming back into our finish line. You'll notice there's still 550 feet of elevation gain in this 6.5 mile stretch. So the work is not done by any stretch of the imagination. Max grade, or excuse me, average grade is a negative -0.1. So you have that going for you. But this is going to be where the weather really starts to kind of play a part, right? You've been battling it all day. You've probably been out here for longer than you expect or want to be out here. So if the weather conditions are unfavorable, this is another area where they start to pop up. So leading up until this point, you got another thing to watch out for, and that's weather management right here. And once you get back through this point, right, we do have a net uphill, and let's just change this really fast up to this water stop out here. We have an average elevation gain of 340 feet right here. So this point is kind of the last real tester in terms of a section standpoint. And then after you get past here, let's reroute our places in here. For the last 3.3 miles, we have an elevation loss of 424 feet. So again, you're loading up your quads if you're not paying attention. Big time, we have some steep declines. And this is going to be where a lot of athletes are really kind of exploding out here. Last big thing on the weather is this is a really open course. So whatever the wind is doing, you're going to feel the full effects of that. I mean, there's nothing really to eat the wind up like city streets or skyscrapers and things like that, right? There's nothing to kind of eat that wind up. It's wide open. So the gusts out here are going to be more than normal. If there's any hint of bad weather, you're going to feel it big time out here. But I mean, overall, this is going to be a really, really fun day, really, really challenging day. I am excited to see how it all plays out there. Make sure you are watching the forecast in the days leading up to it. Watch out for that mud, gravel, kind of that slipping hazards out there. You will probably have a point where you do fall. And the biggest thing is respecting the course out here. A lot of people come out here and want to put their stamp on it, right? But you got to be careful out here. That is our 2026 Virginia Marathon, like we talked about before. If you want any individual coaching insights or course recon breakdown for you specifically, please reach out down below. Contact info is there. Good luck to everyone racing on the 2026 edition.